Chapter number 16, Digestion and Absorption. Food is one of the basic requirements of all living organisms. The major components of our food are carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Vitamins and minerals are also required in small quantities. Food provides energy and organic material for growth and repair of tissues. The water we take in plays an important role in metabolic processes and also prevents dehydration of the body. Biomacromolecules in food cannot be utilized by our body in their original form. They have to be broken down and converted into simple substances in the digestive system. This process of conversion of complex food substances to simple absorbable forms is called digestion and is carried out by our digestive system by mechanical and biochemical methods. General organization of the human digestive system is shown in figure 16.1. 16.1 Digestive System. The human digestive system consists of the alimentary canal and the associated glands. 16.1.1 Alimentary Canal. The alimentary canal begins with an anterior opening, the mouth, and it opens out posteriorly through the anus. The mouth leads to the buccal cavity or oral cavity. The oral cavity has a number of teeth and a muscular tongue. Each tooth is embedded in a socket of jawbone. This type of attachment is called thecodont. Majority of mammals, including human beings, forms two sets of teeth during their life. A set of temporary milk or deciduous teeth replaced by a set of permanent or adult teeth. This type of dentition is called diphodont. An adult human has 32 permanent teeth which are of 4 different types. In bracket, heterodont dentition, namely incisors, canine, premolars and molars. Arrangement of teeth in each half of the upper and lower jaw in the order I, C, PM, M is represented by a dental formula which in human is 2123 by 2123. The hard chewing surface of the teeth made up of enamel helps in mastication of food. The tongue is a freely movable muscular organ attached to the floor of the oral cavity by the frenulum. The upper surface of the tongue has small projections called papillae, some of which bear taste buds. The oral cavity leads into a short pharynx which serves as a common passage for food and air. The esophagus and the trachea in bracket windpipe open into the pharynx. A cartilaginous flap called epiglottis prevents the entry of food into the glottis, opening of the windpipe during swallowing. The esophagus is a thin, long tube which extends posteriorly, passing through the neck, thorax and diaphragm and leads to a J-shaped bag-like structure called stomach. A muscular sphincter regulates the opening of esophagus into the stomach. The stomach, located in the upper left portion of the abdominal cavity, has 3 major parts. A cardiac portion into which the esophagus opens, a fundic region and a pyloric portion which opens into the first part of small intestine. Small intestine is distinguishable into 3 regions: C-shaped duodenum, a long coiled middle portion jejunum and a highly coiled ileum. The opening of the stomach into the duodenum is guarded by the pyloric sphincter. Ileum opens into the large intestine. It consists of cecum, colon and rectum. Cecum is a small blind sac which hosts some symbiotic microorganisms. A narrow finger-like tubular projection, the vermiform appendix, which is a vestigial organ, arises from the cecum. The cecum opens into the colon. The colon is divided into 3 parts, an ascending, a transverse and a descending part. The descending part opens into the rectum, which opens out through the anus. The wall of alimentary canal from esophagus to rectum possesses 4 layers, namely serosa, muscularis, submucosa and mucosa. Serosa is the outermost layer and is made up of a thin mesothelium with some connective tissues. Muscularis is formed by smooth muscles usually arranged into an inner circular and an outer longitudinal layer. An oblique muscle layer may be present in some regions. The submucosal layer is formed of loose connective tissue containing nerves, blood and lymph vessels. In duodenum, glands are also present in submucosa. The innermost layer lining the lumen of the alimentary canal is the mucosa. This layer forms irregular folds in the stomach and small finger-like foldings called villi in the small intestine. The cells lining the villi produce numerous microscopic projections called microvilli, giving a brush border appearance. These modifications increase the surface area enormously. Villi are supplied with a network of capillaries and a large lymph vessel called the lactale. Mucosal epithelium has goblet cells which secrete mucus that help in lubrication. Mucosa also forms glands in the stomach and crypts in between the bases of villi in the intestine. All the four layers show modifications in different parts of the alimentary canal. 16.1.2 Digestive Glands. The digestive glands associated with the alimentary canal include the salivary glands, the liver and the pancreas. Saliva is mainly produced by three pairs of salivary glands, the parotids, the submaxillary or submandibular and the sublinguals. These glands, situated just outside the buccal cavity, secrete salivary juice into the buccal cavity. Liver is the largest gland of the body, weighing about 1.2 to 1.5 kg in an adult human. It is situated in the abdominal cavity just below the diaphragm and has two lobes. The hepatic lobules are the structural and functional units of liver containing hepatic cells arranged in the form of codes. Each lobule is covered by a thin connective tissue sheath called the Glissen's capsule. The bile secreted by the hepatic cells passes through the hepatic duct and is stored and concentrated in a thin muscular sac called the gallbladder. The duct of gallbladder along with the hepatic duct from the liver forms the common bile duct. The bile duct and the pancreatic duct open together into the duodenum as the common hepatopancreatic duct, which is guarded by a sphincter called the sphincter of Oddi. The pancreas is a compound in bracket both exocrine and endocrine elongated organ situated between the limbs of the U-shaped duodenum. The exocrine portion secretes an alkaline pancreatic juice containing enzymes, and the endocrine portion secretes hormones, insulin and glucagon. 16.2 Digestion of food. The process of digestion is accomplished by mechanical and chemical processes. The buccal cavity performs two major functions: mastication of food and facilitation of swallowing. The teeth and the tongue, with the help of saliva, masticate and mix up the food thoroughly. Mucus and saliva helps in lubricating and adhering the masticated food particles into a bolus. The bolus is then conveyed into the pharynx and then into the esophagus by swallowing or deglutition. The bolus further passes down through the esophagus by successive waves of muscular contraction called peristalsis. The gastroesophageal sphincter controls the passage of food into the stomach. The saliva secreted into the oral cavity contains electrolytes and enzymes, salivary amylase and lysozyme. The chemical process of digestion is initiated in the oral cavity by the hydrolytic action of the carbohydrate splitting enzyme, the salivary amylase. About 30% of starch is hydrolyzed here by this enzyme into a disaccharide maltose. Lysozyme present in saliva act as an antibacterial agent that prevent infections. The mucosa of stomach has gastric glands. Gastric glands have three major types of cells, namely: first, mucus neck cells which secrete mucus; second, peptic or chief cells which secrete the proenzyme pepsinogen; and third, parietal or oxyntic cells which secrete HCl, and intrinsic factor. The stomach stores the food for 4 to 5 hours. The food mixes thoroughly with the acidic gastric juice of the stomach by the churning movements of its muscular wall and is called the chyme. The proenzyme pepsinogen, on exposure to hydrochloric acid, gets converted into the active enzyme pepsin, the proteolytic enzyme of the stomach. Pepsin converts proteins into proteoses and peptones. The mucus and bicarbonate present in the gastric juice play an important role in lubrication and protection of the mucosal epithelium from excoriation by the highly concentrated hydrochloric acid. HCl provides the acidic pH in pH 1.8 optimal for pepsins. Rennin is a proteolytic enzyme found in gastric juice of infants which helps in the digestion of milk proteins. Small amounts of lipase are also secreted by gastric glands. Various types of movements are generated by the muscularis layer of the small intestine. This movement helps in thorough mixing up of the food with various secretions in the intestine and thereby facilitate digestion. The bile, pancreatic juice and the intestinal juice are the secretions released into the small intestine. Pancreatic juice and bile are released through the hepatopancreatic duct. The pancreatic juice contains inactive enzymes trypsinogen, chymotrypsinogen, procarboxypeptidase, amylase, lipase and nuclease. Trypsinogen is activated by an enzyme enterokinase secreted by the intestinal mucosa into active trypsin, which in turn activate the other enzymes in the pancreatic juice. The bile released into the duodenum contains bile pigments, bile salts, cholesterol and phospholipids but no enzymes. Bile help in emulsification of fats, that is breaking down of the fats into very small micelles. Bile also activate lipase. The intestinal mucosal epithelium has goblet cells which secrete mucus. The secretions of the brush border cells of the mucosa along with the secretions of the goblet cells constitute the intestinal juice or succus entericus. This juice contains a variety of enzymes like disaccaridases, dipeptidase, lipase, nucleosidase, etc. The mucose along with the bicarbonates from the pancreas protect the intestinal mucosa from acid as well as provide an alkaline medium pH 7.8 for enzymatic activities. Submucosal glands also help in this. Proteins, proteoses and peptones in the chyme reaching the intestine are acted upon by the proteolytic enzymes of pancreatic juice as given below. Carbohydrates in the chyme are hydrolyzed by pancreatic amylase into disaccharides. Fats are broken down by lipases with the help of bile into di and monoglycerides. Nucleases in the pancreatic juice act on nucleic acids to form nucleotides and nucleosides. The enzymes in the succus entericus act on the end products of the above reactions to form the respective simple absorbable forms. These final steps in digestion occur very close to the mucosal epithelial cells of the intestine. The breakdown of biomacromolecules mentioned above occurs in the duodenum region of the small intestine. The simple substances thus formed are absorbed in the jejunum and ileum regions of the small intestine. The undigested and unabsorbed substances are passed on to the large intestine. No significant digestive activity occurs in the large intestine. The functions of large intestine are: first, absorption of some water, minerals and certain drugs. Second, secretion of mucus which helps in adhering the waste particles together and lubricating it for an easy passage. The undigested, unabsorbed substances called feces enters into the cecum of the large intestine through ileocecal valve, which prevent the backflow of the fecal matter. It is temporarily stored in the rectum till defecation. The activities of the gastrointestinal tract are under neural and hormonal control for proper coordination of different parts. The sight, smell and or the presence of food in the oral cavity can stimulate the secretion of saliva. Gastric and intestinal secretions are also similarly stimulated by neural signals. The muscular activities of different parts of the alimentary canal can also be moderated by neural mechanism, both local and through CNS. Hormonal control of the secretion of digestive juices is carried out by local hormones produced by the gastric and intestinal mucosa. 16.3 Absorption of digested products. Absorption is the process by which the end product of digestion passes through the intestinal mucosa into the blood or lymph. It is carried out by passive, active or facilitated transport mechanisms. Small amount of monosaccharides like glucose, amino acids and some electrolytes like chloride ions are generally absorbed by simple diffusion. The passage of these substances into the blood depends upon the concentration gradients. However, some substances like glucose and amino acids are absorbed with the help of carrier proteins. This mechanism is called the facilitated transport. Transport of water depends upon the osmotic gradient. Active transport occurs against the concentration gradient and hence requires energy. Various nutrients like amino acids, monosaccharides like glucose, electrolytes like Na+ are absorbed into the blood by this mechanism. Fatty acids and glycerol being insoluble cannot be absorbed into the blood. They are first incorporated into small droplets called micelles which move into the intestinal mucosa. They are reformed into very small protein-coated fat globules called the chylomicrons which are transported into the lymph vessels in the villi. These lymph vessels ultimately release the absorbed substances into the bloodstream. Absorption of substances takes place in different parts of the alimentary canal like mouth, stomach, small intestine and large intestine. However, maximum absorption occurs in the small intestine. A summary of absorption is given in table 16.1. The absorbed substances finally reach the tissues which utilize them for their activities. This process is called assimilation. The digestive waste solidified into coherent feces in the rectum initiate a neural reflex causing an urge or desire for its removal. The ejection of feces to the outside through the anal opening is a voluntary process and is carried out by a mass peristaltic movement. 16.4 Disorders of digestive system. The inflammation of the intestinal tract is the most common ailment due to the bacterial or viral infections. The infections are also caused by the parasites of the intestine like tapeworm, roundworm, threadworm, hookworm, pinworm, etc. Jaundice. The liver is affected, skin and eyes turn yellow due to the deposits of bile pigments. Vomiting. It is the ejection of stomach content through the mouth. This reflex action is controlled by the vomit center in the medulla. A feeling of nausea precedes vomiting. Diarrhea. The abnormal frequency of bowel movement and increased liquidity of the fecal discharge is known as diarrhea. It reduces the absorption of food. Constipation. In constipation, the feces are retained within the rectum as the bowel movement occurs irregularly. Indigestion. In this condition, the food is not properly digested, leading to a feeling of fullness. The causes of indigestion are inadequate enzyme secretion, anxiety, food poisoning, overeating and spicy food.